You're listening to ayahuascapodcast.com.
I always tell people when they ask me this question, can ayahuasca enlighten you? I always say no. It's like you're walking on a path and there's these giant rocks, boulders in the way, and you need to remove them, but you don't know how to do it. Ayahuasca could come and say, okay, I can remove this one, I can remove this one, but now you have to stand up and you have to walk the path yourself. You have to get up and you have to do the practices and you have to be aware. On some level, ayahuasca, people who have drank it for many years will realize it doesn't enlighten you, but it is a vehicle that will help tremendously. And then at the end of the day, you're a sovereign being and you must choose which path and you must choose how to spend your life. Do you want to be aware or not? Ayahuasca can't just make you aware.
In this episode of Ayahuasca Podcast, I have a conversation with Spring Washam. We talk about topics of ayahuasca and mindfulness. How can ayahuasca speed up your healing and mindfulness journey and vice versa? How can meditation enhance the ayahuasca experience and integration? We talk about how ayahuasca and psychedelics can save the world, Buddhism and ayahuasca, and much more. Enjoy this episode. This episode is sponsored by La Huayra Ayahuasca Retreat. At La Huayra, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. La Huayra, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you. Hi guys, and welcome to ayahuascapodcast.com. As always, with you, the host, Sam Believ. Today, I'm going to have a conversation with Spring Washam. Spring is a healer. She's a teacher. She's a visionary leader. She's from California. She's a Buddhist teacher. She studied Buddhism since 1999. She's also an ayahuasca facilitator, an author, and the founder of Lotus Wine Journeys. Spring, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Spring, you, even reading your description and your bio, it's very clear that you have a very unique perspective and unique take on both the world of Eastern spirituality and Amazonian tradition. And tell us your story. How did you end up being that person and combining those two modalities? What in your life brought you to this path?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say suffering and this exploration of pain and suffering is really what triggered everything. And as growing up, I grew up in really difficult situations and just all the drama of living in an urban community and, father's gone and all this trauma in my family. So as a growing up young person and as a teenager, I was really interested in psychology, actually. Like, why is there so much suffering here? Why is everyone fighting? And so that kind of got me on a path of self-reflection, because I kept being like, I think this all has to do with our minds. There's something going on with our thinking. I always made that connection even as a small child, like, what is wrong with our mind right now? They're acting from this place. So naturally that got me on the path of meditation at a very young age, just to kind of start to understand my mind. And first I was Hindu for a while. I was practicing and learning how to meditate. There wasn't, at this time, this was like maybe 30 years ago, right? There wasn't a lot of information like there is now. Now we're really lucky. We're like in the golden era. There's apps, there's classes, everything's there, free, online, You almost have to try not to pay attention, make some kind of effort. But what happened was I heard about a retreat it was in the desert in Southern California, and it was led by a Buddhist teacher who's very well known named Jack Kornfield, and psychologist, and just like really instrumental in bringing a lot of Buddhist philosophy to the West. He founded 2 big meditation centers. One I'm still connected with called Spirit Rock Meditation Center in West Marin. That's like right outside San Francisco. And I didn't even know who was leading the retreat, but I went on my first retreat, and that really got me deeply connected to Buddhist philosophy, like how suffering is created. And that for many years, I guess I was more of like a yogi on that path. I spent years practicing, meditating, traveling around the world, studying with Buddhist teachers in all different traditions, Tibetan tradition and Theravada tradition and Zen tradition, and really trying to understand the nature of suffering and freedom and liberation. And I did that for many years, and I was teaching classes and programs, but yet there was always still this layer that I felt like I could not untangle, right? It was like a baseline unhappiness. Like everything was great on the outer side, but there was this feeling that of disconnection somewhere in the roots of my being that was like, it was painful, and I was still sad, and yet I was supposed to be this teacher for everyone else. And I was out there, and I'm sure people can resonate with that they're, we're all just like, I guess, wounded healers or something until we're all liberated. And it reached a big kind of crescendo peak moment. And on a retreat, I kind of had like a disassociation when I got lost in a whole bunch of unresolved trauma. And nobody in that time knew how to deal with trauma in the Buddhist Eastern world. They were like, just go back and meditate, just continue. And we're so much more trauma informed now. I mean, every day we're learning huge amounts on how to work with trauma, how to be with it, how to support others, as you probably know from your work. But during this kind of dark night of the soul, when everybody was counting on me, I heard about ayahuasca from a psychologist, and they said, hey, this could really help you. And I was so desperate at that time. I was really open. You know how you get when you're just at the bottom. You're like, what? Drink this vine from the jungle? Oh, okay. And I got invited to a small ceremony. This was over 15 years ago. It was still very new for a lot of folks in the North even. And I did a ceremony, and I had just such the classic, everything that you could want out of an ayahuasca journey I had in an 8-hour period. I mean, it was like love and pain and suffering and insight. And what I noticed for me is that there was a lot of Buddhist iconography and messages, and I was using my practice to be with the intensity of the experience in the moment. And then from there on, I was just in a deep connection with ayahuasca. And I immediately got, during that ceremony, I should go to Peru. So I started going to Peru, and this started a whole journey of me spending months in the Amazon and living with Shipibo healers. And I eventually even spent a year studying, dieting. But all the time, I was always utilizing my Buddhist practices of mindfulness, awareness, love, and compassion. And I saw that I was sort of accelerating insight and awakening. I was moving faster, and that, I think that's what was so helpful. I was so grounded during those early days where everyone was screaming and freaking out, and there wasn't a lot of containment all the time. And I started to see how I was using it as kind of like ultimate meditation. And I was opening these places in my mind where I was starting to understand what great masters were talking about when they would talk about interconnection and presence and karma. And so everything began to make sense on this quantum level. And then that's how my journey really started. So a few years after that, I started going, I want to have Buddhist-based ayahuasca retreats where we drink a lot of medicine, but we study a lot too, to try to support what we were understanding, the insight, and to understand who we are faster.
Thank you, Spring. Thank you for sharing your story. It's a very interesting one. Mine was a little bit opposite. I started with the ayahuasca straight away, and then I started discovering meditation and everything else. And I know I pick up from different traditions, different things that kind of work for me. Interesting enough, my chief facilitator at the retreat right now is spent some few months in a Zen Buddhist monastery, and he's very grounded in that tradition. So I personally believe exactly the same thing you're saying, that there seems to be this amazing match between ayahuasca and mindfulness traditions. It's like the analogy I like to use, both with mindfulness and integration, which honestly is a very similar thing. If you look at it, is that ayahuasca, if you like mining, ayahuasca is like a dynamite, and meditation or integration is like a pickaxe and a shovel. So if you just keep exploding over and over again, it's messy. If you just keep with a shovel, it's very slow. So, but if you go like explode and then shovel, explode then shovel, you just have this optimum rate. So, as you mentioned, Buddhism and suffering, ayahuasca. Do you think so? The one of the things about Buddhism is it set out to end the world suffering. So do you think ayahuasca can help with that somehow? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's so interesting. I love it. More and more people who maybe started with ayahuasca and then after years of practicing, they realize exactly they need to integrate, right? You like the explosions over and over, you can, spin out in that. And so the meditation is just, it's how we integrate this into our being. And I had the same thought when I was teaching for years in these Buddhist communities and teaching mindfulness. I was teaching insight meditation, mindfulness, and I would see people that weren't really progressing, right? They would come in, I'm a teacher, they would share with me what their meditation was like. And it was like they weren't growing anymore in that practice. It was like they hit a plateau, they hit a wall. And the people who were just doing medicine, they lacked a kind of ground, a clear path and ethics, which without groundedness, without awareness, and without ethical conduct, you're like a loose, you're raw dynamite. You could explode, even though you have some wisdom, you're learning, but you don't have a way to process it. You don't have a path, right? In the Shipibo lineage, there was no path of liberation at the end. There was a map, there was a road, but it wasn't clear where it was going. Oh, okay, you're going to be healed, but healed how? What does ultimate healing look like? How many ceremonies do we do here before, we are quote unquote done on some level? So I think ayahuasca can help us because the ayahuasca, I always tell people when they ask me this question, can ayahuasca enlighten you? I always say no. It can show you the obstacles. It's like you're walking on a path and there's these giant rocks, boulders in the way, right? And you need to remove them, but you don't know how to do it. Ayahuasca could come and say, okay, I can remove this one, I can remove this one. But now you have to stand up and you have to walk the path yourself. You have to get up and you have to do the practices and you have to be aware. So I think on some level, ayahuasca, people who have drank it for many years will realize it doesn't enlighten you, but it is a vehicle that will help tremendously. And then at the end of the day, you're a sovereign being and you must choose which path and you must choose how to spend your life. Do you want to be aware or not? Ayahuasca can't just make you aware. It's like there's a choice factor that I think many of us are understanding. Hence, we are moving more into what are the liberation practices. Okay, let's go to the ancient schools now. Let's look at how we can combine these because ayahuasca removes the blocks, but then there's a lot more you have to do. It's like a 50% relationship. You know how everybody wants, it's like 50-50. Ayahuasca as your doctor will give you 50%. Now you have to do the other 50 and you need to put that in. Otherwise, even with ayahuasca, I've seen people plateau, get stuck and stop drinking it if they can't do their 50%.
It's like you have a friend and you go out and he always makes you pay for everything. And then eventually just like 2 or 3 dates later, you're like, come on, like, it's time. So you stop going out with them. So ayahuasca is also like this, I've been giving you homework and why you keep coming back? Where's the progress, and it gives you a bad trip. It's like, here you go.
Yeah, because it's showing you where you're resisting. And exactly, it's like any great teacher. They love their students who are doing what they're asking them to do. Ayahuasca is not just a doctor, but a very, very profound teacher. And if you only want to take the certain parts out of it, if you just want the excitement or some kind of tripping experience, you will not always get that. So sometimes, yes, but other times it's the work that you need to do in your life. It's the forgiveness. It's opening your heart. It's knowing how to sustain awareness, right? How to work with your mind skillfully, how to see what is true and what is not. You can't just always depend. Exactly. It's a relationship when you enter into ayahuasca. I always tell people this is a living spirit. You're going to enter in, and I always look at ayahuasca as the most profound teacher, but one of my most profound teachers. I have other profound teachers, and they work together, right? It's a team. What do they say? It takes a village. Yeah, it does right now, and especially in this dark time. We need all the tools, all the masters, the ones that are in human body and the spirits. We need all of them as our community. And if you do the work, if you're willing, they'll show up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned integration or like lack of direction with indigenous traditions. I was thinking about it, and I think what happens there is, for example, here in the beautiful Colombian countryside, when people come over, they're like, I feel like I don't even need to meditate anymore, but because just being here and looking at the nature already is like a form of meditation. So you get like 20 little meditations throughout the day. So I think that what happens to the indigenous people is because they're still in this natural environment, they just naturally meditate all the time because they're like looking at the leaves and the greenery and the sounds of the river flowing. It's literally, when we meditate now, we turn on like this apps with music, and it's like that's what we're trying to imitate. Maybe that's why they don't need to, but as opposed to like Westerners, you come here and you have this beautiful experience, and then you're like back to the concrete jungle with all the sort of scary noises and ugly looking buildings and stress. Of course, you're like, what the hell? So
Yeah, that's a really, I absolutely agree with you that being in nature is naturally very meditative. Just turning off your phone and going in nature, you naturally become present. And I think that that's a really, really important insight. And I agree with you. A lot of indigenous people, they're practicing, and they also don't have the same kind of wounding that the Westerners have. It's a very different type of psychology. It's a very disassociated state with a lot of Westerners. They don't recognize their impact. They don't see interconnectedness, right? They have to go somewhere in this environment to kind of remember it, but we're very forgetful, right? The moment we leave, we remember some things, but so that's why these practices, mindfulness, that word, I love that word mindfulness, because one translation of it is remembering. It's like we really have to remember who we are right now because it's apocalyptic times that we're in, and everything that we depend on could start crumbling. And then what do you have left? You got to remember who you are, to remember you're connected.
yeah, we live in uniquely difficult times. But as you said, we're lucky because we also have uniquely amazing tools available. Like 50 years ago, people didn't have ayahuasca or at least ready access to it or even meditation. So that's why a lot of people ended up drinking alcohol or taking drugs that are not really that productive. So we have unique challenges, but also unique tools. And I guess the guess is the question is who wins, the people that aim for mindfulness and like restoration, love and peace, or the people who want to kind of, even though they don't want it consciously, but people that are subconsciously destroying the world. But talking about mindfulness, right? At Lawara, for example, we get people to do. We do yoga every day, every second day, which is nice. It's also a form of integration and mindfulness. And then we do breathing exercises and guided meditation right before every ceremony to put people in that state where it's easier for them to open up. In your opinion, also as a facilitator, what is the best use of, let's say, meditation and different mindfulness techniques around ayahuasca ceremonies or during an ayahuasca retreat?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. On my retreats, I was doing for many years 14 days, and we would do 6 ceremonies. So that was a lot. And we would always, for the hour before the ceremony, we would do practice. It would be a very short little Dharma talk, a half an hour sit, and then we'd have a short break before we would continue into the ceremony space. But we set it like a pre-ceremony meditation. And then, for me, I would also give Dharma talks throughout the retreat and point people to what is mindfulness, what is embodiment. And also during a lot of our ceremonies, and even in the middle, it could be a little bit hectic, but I would ring a bell and remind people to connect to their breath and their body. Like, come back. You are in your body. Whatever is happening, know that you can be with this. So we would be training people on all of the tools of mindfulness, how to feel our feelings, how to be with difficult experiences, how to be with pain physically and emotionally. And we would just, utilize all of these different, practices, and we would try to create a very mindful atmosphere. Embodiment, that's what I would focus on a lot. That's the first foundation of mindfulness, to just be in your body. It's a big one.
Thank you for that. It's a question I like to ask anyone who sort of works with ayahuasca. As a facilitator, especially given your unique holistic point of view, how do you explain how does ayahuasca healing happens? What is that process from your understanding?
Well, I think what it helps us do is really, for me, ayahuasca is like, I always tell people it's the root medicine. It's a root vine, and it works on root chakra, root problems. For me, ayahuasca is deeply helpful for people who want to heal issues in their families, right? Their birth, their mother, their father. Like, we're healing our family trees with ayahuasca. And the root chakra is the hardest one to get down because it's so deep in us, right? Root problems. We can't access it. So what's beautiful about ayahuasca and all these plant medicine is they give us access into deep layers of our unconsciousness, right? What we can't always see all the time. We're very on the surface. We often have to, right? We don't have time to unpack these huge wounds that emanate in our body, trauma. I think one of the biggest things is ayahuasca really helps us to release trauma so we can access these deeper levels of our unconsciousness. And, not only energies that are stored in our body, but in our emotional body, in our light body, our whatever subtle body, right? These things are so buried. So it gives us an opportunity to unpack everything that we're not seeing in our daily life. And this is very valuable because when you start to work on those deep, buried, subconscious wounds, it frees you up in every other area of your life, right? You live with more happiness. So it is the doctor, and for me, it works on all the chakras, but I really feel like the root system, identity, who we are, mother, father, great, great, great grandmother, where we were born, what is in our family that's passed down to us, things that we just don't see. These medicines, particularly ayahuasca, helps us to not only see it, but to work with it consciously, right? We bring it up into the conscious mind, and then there we have to do the work to really sort through the tangles of what it is, whether it's some kinds of abuse or, but we know that we live in it with people who are very traumatized, right? We live in a world full of trauma, and this stuff is buried in our bodies. So for me, I always describe ayahuasca. That's one of the aspects of ayahuasca. There's so many, depending on what levels you're on. I don't like to say levels, but there are different stages and experiences. There's no end to the mystery of this medicine, this consciousness itself unfolding. So different stages, I experienced very different, journeys, which I love. It's never boring. I've never once been bored in an ayahuasca ceremony. I've done hundreds, and so led people. So, but this is, I think the main thing is this unconsciousness and bringing us into a conscious state.
Thank you. That's a really great explanation. And then what you're talking about, levels and never getting bored, that's really true. I tend to really obsess about a topic for maybe 3 to 4 years, and then I move on with ayahuasca and psychedelics in general. There's no ever grasping of completeness of it, and I keep getting amazed by how unique each ceremony can be. And at Lawara, our motto actually is connect, heal, grow, which is like you come, you connect first, then you heal, and then you grow. So this connecting and healing process can take, few months and few years for some people, depending on how big your trauma is. But the growing part, it never ends. I think it's like you can be doing it for 100 years and you probably will still be unlocking new levels of this limitless spiritual exploration. So the level at which you are, and I assume that you've been drinking ayahuasca for a while now, is can you talk about it now? What are you personally feeling mostly? Is it mostly now like lectures, or is it ayahuasca teaching you how to help others, or what is your experience with the medicine now?
Yeah, well, again, I hear you on the never ending. It's just like pages in a book that they just keep flipping them. And now I know one thing about me is I used to want to get to some kind of definitive ending. Like at this stage, it'll all be done, right? After this ceremony and this purge, I went through this big thing. Now this is healed. And then it's like another big thing is on the horizon. It's just like, oh my God, there's no end. So now I'm really in a very surrendered state around all of that. It's like, oh, right, it's here. The journey is right here, right now. It's not about trying to get to the end of the tangle or to heal my mother it's like, yeah, that could happen. That might not happen. Who knows? But I think there's something about my work right now is just kind of a radical embodiment of now, right? Everything is alive right now. I don't have to wait until some other place. And that feels like I've come full circle on something with my Buddhist path. Like I've gone all around and now I'm back again, but yet I'm back again in a different place.
Yeah, it's I guess this is where your Buddhist training comes really handy. So you kind of like let go of the ego and don't expect this one very specific level where everything is, you get your crown or whatever and no more trauma exists. I think definitely with ayahuasca, it's with healing journey in general, but with plant medicine specifically, it's journey of endless contractions and expansions, and it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And you definitely are growing, but it's really hard to see it immediately, because sometimes it feels like 100 steps forward and 99 steps back, but still there's one step. You mentioned that we're living in apocalyptic times. Why do you believe that? And why do you say that psychedelics is our last hope?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that it's about consciousness, right? And energy. And on the planet right now, it's just so many people lost in their minds, right? And the mind is so negative. The ego is such a grasp. No one's present, right? And the ego, ultimately it's a sociopath, right? Everyone's always, I notice everyone now is obsessed. I don't know about you, but hear the word narcissist and everyone's accusing everyone else of being a narcissist. Like, you're a narcissist, don't date a narcissist. And I'm like, we're all narcissists. I mean, we're obsessed on ourselves. We have very strong attachment to our thoughts in our mind and our stories. And this is what is killing us. You know, it's so disconnected from who we really are. So I think one of the beautiful things about psychedelics is that it can bring us back into our true nature. You know, we're not our thoughts. We're not our mind. We're not our trauma. There's something so deeply radiant and beautiful, what you call it true nature or pure consciousness, or there's so many words for this state. But I think what it's trying to move into that. And the apocalypse is that, you know, so many of these systems are built on this egoic, you know, whether you look at healthcare systems or military systems, everything is built on this very strong egoic system. And, you know, as people start to awaken, you know, it's like there is something shifting and moving faster and faster. And it's happening at the same time. Right. So there is this, it feels like a collision course, but like, you know, an earthquake, the plates, they come together and then at one point they shift, right? Because the pressure builds and then there's this earthquake, right? It's like, wow, the pressure creates the quake. And I feel like there is a pressure on us right now. This is old systems are collapsing and patriarchy and white supremacy and colonization. You see, everything that was built on greed, hatred, and delusion, it can't last. That's deeply Buddhist wisdom. Nothing built on greed or hate or delusion will ever stand the test of time. It can't. It's universal principles. So only things built on love and compassion and interconnectedness can last. And I think that we're trying to make this quantum shift into that. And so these old systems are just, they're going out, but that doesn't mean there's not a big fight for them, for people deeply invested their identity in these systems. They're going to fight and they'll even die for it, right? They'll fight, they'll die, they'll hurt other people and in their confusion. But there is something I feel deeply inspired about this time too, just what you were just saying, Sam. You were like, wow, we live in all this, there's a darkness, but then there's all these tools that we've never had before. You know, it's like all the plant medicines and MDMA and mushrooms and, you know, it's like this flourishing and everything is coming out. It's what happens when it's about to be that quake, right? Those who can, get in your lifeboat now and start practicing, right? So that you can make this shift. And it's exciting. And also, you know, when I'm not mindful, I get scared, you know, but when I am aware, I'm trusting and the universe is unfolding. And even if we all, you know, pass away, that's the nature of this reality too. We all will pass away. Nothing here is permanent. So there's a lot for people.
On the similar topic, you say that ayahuasca can help heal racism. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what do we do and how do we do it?
Well, I've kind of seen how these medicines, and I've been talking to other people here involved in psychedelic research, and I was recently at a conference where I heard about how MDMA was healing Nazis, people with a lot of Nazi fixation, you know, and how opening their heart and doing MDMA with therapy, here's the thing, not just out in a party, but with the therapist, again, integration. Well, because I think what all of these medicines do is they help us get into what's in the subconscious mind, right? They get onto the level of our programs, you know, and, you know, racism is just like, it's like a parasite, right? It's like we're all human beings and then we adopt this part that's like, it's a cancer, right? It's like hating ourselves, you know, but we just project it out. So it's like we have to heal that energy in order to make this shift. to some degree. Not everybody, but a large group of people will have to understand the truth, which is that we are all interconnected. This is very foundational in Buddhism 101, but it's hard to understand that on the deepest level of your being. And I feel like psychedelics and these medicines help us on the deepest layer of our being feel that interconnected. I know you had so many experiences being in the jungle, and people report. I mean, when we were in Peru on the river, it's like people, I am the river, I am the cockroaches, I am the birds, I am the trees, I am the wind. And they feel fundamentally shifted, right, by losing their identity as an isolated individual cut off, So I don't know of another way that can move as fast as these medicines can move us. We have to shift a little bit faster. And they give us, doesn't mean easy, everybody, fast and easy. No, the ayahuasca is hard work,
Yeah, I've definitely seen this, and I've also experienced it myself, where you go through this ego dissolution where all of a sudden you realize we're all connected. And then it also means that if you hurt others, you're also hurting yourself, including hurting nature, because we're just this one organism, this very skinny slime on the top of this rock flying through the space. So it really puts things in the perspective. Let's go back to a little bit about mindfulness and in your past as somebody training Buddhism. I believe in one of the interviews you said that when you first started drinking ayahuasca, you kind of had to almost hide it because it was not really that common. What do Buddhist people think about psychedelics?
Well, like the world is an evolution. It's an evolving process. Yes, I used to get in a lot of trouble early days when I would come back to my community. And I hid it for years because, I would say I'm going on retreat, and then I would go down to the Iquitos, and I would be, in the jungle. And I think everybody at this, there's a 911 signal going off here. So I think the openness to think about mental health has expanded the conversation into less judgment, right? That these things can be really helpful for people. And how I always framed it with other colleagues of mine that were like, this isn't Buddhism. What you're doing down there isn't Buddhism, right? And I would say, oh, but it is. It's like an accelerated. I'm teaching people how to be present in this deep journey that can be overwhelming, or terrifying, or, and then I'm giving them tools. People are going to do psychedelics no matter what. I might as well be out there teaching people how to be mindful and giving a path that for a lot of people could be really helpful. And I'm not just trying to indoctrinate people into Buddhism. I'm giving them a path of awareness, sharing with them the path of awareness, sharing them how to open their heart, doing compassion practices, focusing on love, understanding consciousness, right? Disidentifying so heavily with the ego and form, and, trying to get people to see they're more than that. So I see myself as somebody out there that, all these people have all these power tools and they can blow themselves up. And I'm trying to be like, well, hey, everybody, why don't we integrate this way? So I think there's more openness now to the whole thing, but everybody is finding that the world is getting more open. This is just like where we are. Eventually, all of this will be legal. 100%.
Meanwhile, for some people, it's hard to come out of the psychedelic closet, as we call it. We have people that tell their parents, yeah, I'm at the yoga retreat or something like that.
Yeah, oh yeah, for me too. And I've had people that wouldn't take pictures and hid it from their partners they were married to. I had one guy who, when his wife was so terrified, but he kept coming to our retreats. And then finally he told her, honey, look, you love me so much more now. I'm so much better, but this is what I've been doing. And, I just think there's just fear. Fear keeps people, stuck. We're loyal to our pain. And sometimes these ideas feel terrifying. But as research comes in, around the world about the benefits of all of the psychedelic movement and therapies, I think we're going to have a very fast course correction here, and things are going to be moving to legalization faster, and decriminalization's happening all over in the U.S. in different cities, counties by counties, it's happening. Shifts in consciousness is underway.
Spring, an interesting question. If you have ever observed any similarities between Eastern spiritual tradition and the Amazonian spiritual tradition in your work?
Oh my God, there's so many. I think about the practices of like even the Icaros, the rhythm of the Icaros, the healing songs that we sing and get channeled, and maestras and maestros sing them. They sound just like Tibetans chanting, in Nepal outside of shrines and as we go on pilgrimage. I'll never forget one time I think I was in Bodh Gaya and I was in India, the place where the Buddha became enlightenment, and there was a man chanting and it sounded just like an Icaro. And he looked, there was so much similarity. And I think that this is like, we're all connecting to the same channels here. It's not like you have it and I don't, it's like, it's this cosmic library of information. It's called consciousness, right? And we're all pulling books out of it. And, and I think that there are so many similarities just on the presence, the nature, the focus, I think this big part of what's so interesting about our time too is the impact of the earth, the presence of the earth. The earth is like, I'm being affected and you're all going to feel this effect, right? And so it's a powerful time. So for me, these practices, they go hand in hand. They're not separated, everybody. You can work with these together, and then you really have the best of both worlds. You got the power tools on, to build your house really with a solid foundation.
Yeah, they're all, everything comes from the earth in the end of the day, and we have the same bodies with same energy systems, and eventually people find different plant medicines in different regions to get the same messages, and it's very obvious. I remember when I was working with a shaman who never had any exposure to Eastern spirituality, but when he would do the cleanses, he would like paint crosses on the chakras, literally, like, I mean, the ones of them he could physically appropriately access, and it was like, yeah, I'm sure he'd never heard about it, but still the intuitively he knows, and they know how it goes and where it goes. So it's really, I guess, a nice knowing, because it kind of helps you reinforce the belief and trust in the spiritual side of things. Spring, it was a really fun conversation. I think our listeners will enjoy it a lot. Is there anything else we forgot to cover on the general topics that we're talking about?
No, I think this is really good. And I'm always happy to have these conversations about the medicine. And I really like what you're doing down there in Colombia. And it's amazing that we have access to this medicine, and just deep gratitude for all of us who are holding this work with ethics and care and compassion. And we're in a good place with it, and we're doing what we're called to do, to be of service. And I just feel grateful for all of it.
Spring, where can people find more about you? Any of your books that you'd like to recommend them, or your events? One last question I haven't asked about the church that you're building. Let's just answer that one real quick. Why did you go from doing the retreats to now wanting to build a church? And what are the struggles of building an ayahuasca church?
Well, I was really, really wanting to focus on the U.S. and all of the communities here. And so I moved to the southern part, which is historically very conservative. And it's like a desert. of medicines and information. It still felt like kind of some parts are still kind of like in the dark age or something. Is interesting. But there's so many people who I felt called. So I wanted to start working with communities here because laws are changing, perceptions changing, belief systems about plant medicine are shifting, and a lot of decriminalization. So I wanted to start a church that I could take all the money structure out, and base it very similarly on Santo Daime, which is the Christian church that's legal in the U.S. and around the world, and have it be really based on community, community and love and practice. And it just felt like a church, even though it's like, it's a vehicle in which we can be protected with our religious freedom. So that felt important. It's a Buddhist, Christian, mystic, ancestor, indigenous church full of world practices and Sufis and great Zen masters, everything. It's like a stream, right? And everyone's going to get in the stream wherever they feel good about being in that stream, what resonates for them. And so, yeah, we're just in that process, and we're going to build a retreat center, and I wanted it all to be nonprofit. I don't want money to be an obstacle, because many people over the years have written to me and been in situations where they weren't able to fly across the world. And they're like, I'm right here. Can you come here? Can you come here? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I get the request. Can you come to my neighborhood? Can you come to our part of the world? So this just feels like me listening very deeply to my intuition and to support the movement here. I feel like the U.S. is kind of the epicenter of the sickness a little bit. And I'm just like going to go right into the heart of that and then, see what we can do. So apply it.
Well, best of luck on this. I know it's not going to be easy. Now we can go to the previous question. Where can people find more about you? Any of your books you'd like to recommend?
Yeah. You can find me on my website, springwasham.com. And I'm pausing for a period on my international retreats, but I'm going to have meditation retreats coming up. And yeah, springwasham.com. I have books on Amazon. People can find me there. And yeah, I'm online sharing more and more. And yeah, so I'll be doing lots of retreats coming up in 2025. A lot of just pure meditation, light retreats, energy, yoga, all of that. And then also through my church, working with communities in that way too. So I'm doing it all right in 2025. I'm building it all, rebuilt.
Okay, well, best of luck on all those projects. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your unique perspective. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you for listening to Ayahuasca Podcast. As always, with your host, Sam Believ, and I will see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support us and psychedelic renaissance at large, please follow us and leave us a like wherever it is you're listening. Share this episode with someone who will benefit from this information. Nothing in this podcast is intended as medical advice, and it is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This episode is sponsored by La Huayra Ayahuasca Retreat. At La Huayra, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. La Huayra, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you. Vida de la baila, cura con la guaira, limpia